No? Yes? Oh, sorry.
I want to start, Minister, with reference to what the Taoiseach said earlier on today and the use of the term extreme. And this has become a familiar trope of Taoiseach for Adkers when referring to the socialist left and our policies. And it's part of a wider, quite worrying narrative, frankly, that's taken hold in the mainstream political establishment across Europe, which is to say there's extremists over there on the right, there's extremists over there on the left, and there's the nice, sensible, pragmatic centre. And I think an issue like this tests that narrative in a very concrete way and really refutes it in the strongest terms. Because for Elaine, who I've mentioned here before, but whose case is still on my desk, the situation she's facing is extreme, very extreme. And that situation is that she is now past her date when she has to leave her house because the landlord is evicting her for reasons of sale with her 4 children. And she's now overholding. She appealed, although she didn't really have legal grounds to appeal, but just to delay the process because of having nowhere to go. But now, days before Christmas, she is faced with having to overhold or put her and her 4 children into homelessness. And it's worth saying what that homelessness will mean for Elaine, because obviously she has been pleading with the local authority and with all the various agencies and bodies that exist to try and find a solution. She doesn't want to overhold. She doesn't want to be in a confrontation with her landlord, who has now told her he's going to the district court to take out a summons to evict her. But she goes to the council, and what do they tell her? Pathfinders can't find anywhere for her. There is no emergency hub accommodation available for her. She tries every day to look for HAP tenancies and can't find them. Most of the time, she doesn't even get a response. In fact, the only response she's got after checking with multiple landlords is one who asked for her to send a landlord reference and a work reference. She had a landlord reference and a good one. She sent it. But she didn't have a work reference because she's a mother with 4 kids and therefore is not in a position to work. She hasn't heard back from that landlord. That's the only one who even bothered to reply because she is a HAP applicant, if you like. So she has literally nowhere to go. She was told she could self-accommodate, i.e. find a B&B or hotel if she could find one herself. She can't find one. She's looking every day. Place finders can't find one. There is none. Now that's extreme. Over the last few days, the dilemma she's had is because we're approaching Christmas and her young children are pleading with her to put up a Christmas tree. And she's been debating, should I put up a Christmas tree or should I not? Because I don't know if I'm going to be here with my kids before Christmas. She eventually submitted to the pleas of her kids and has put up a Christmas tree. But she doesn't know if she'll be in the place in a few days' time. So what does Elaine do? That's the question for you, Minister. Now, if she has to leave, get out, that's extreme. In fact, everything about Elaine's circumstances are extreme. They're just about as extreme as you could get. Now, how could you then claim that a bill that would prevent that and say, sorry to the landlord, it may be inconvenient for you, it may be a bit of a problem for you, but given that Elaine has nowhere to go, we're not allowing you evict her. What's extreme about that? That's a very reasonable thing for the law to say in the teeth of a crisis like that, like the one we're currently facing. And as Deputy Barry has already pointed out, the provisions in this bill are quite common in other jurisdictions across Europe. And you'd hardly accuse the countries that have already been detailed in Europe of being extremist regimes. We're just trying to stop the flow into homelessness. That is the point. And I think, Minister, unless you can provide an answer for Elaine, morally, you haven't got a leg to stand on, and neither has any TD in this Dáil, not a leg to stand on in opposing this bill. Because you have to answer Elaine's situation. And there's many more Elaines out there faced with that same dilemma coming into Christmas. And the other point I want to make is this, Minister, and it's about HAPs and the contribution that the state's social housing policy is making to these extreme situations that people are facing. I asked in the Housing Oireachtas Committee that you attended this morning how many HAP tenancies, what you call social housing solutions, how many people have had to leave those social housing solutions because the landlord has pulled out. And you gave us the figures. In fairness to you, you promised you would, and they were sent afterwards. And the number is 2,624. That's 2,624 Elaine-type situations. What you have described as a social housing solution has actually turned out not to be a solution, but has resulted in people being plunged back into the extremity of Elaine-type situations. So it's not a housing solution, and you should stop calling it a housing solution. You should most certainly not massage the housing waiting lists by taking people who get HAP tenancies off the housing list, which is, up until HAP was invented, was a housing list that if you got housed on it, you wouldn't face an Elaine-type situation. You were housed, and you were housed for life unless you failed to pay your rent or did something terrible. Okay? That's the difference. That's the difference between a council house and a HAP tenancy. And it's all the difference in the world, Minister. And your social housing plan, Rebuilding Ireland, 90% of it depends on those kind of tenancies. And okay, you can say, well, we have 17,000 HAPs. That worked. But if 2,600 then unravel, how many more are going to unravel? And the answer is, thousands are going to unravel. Looked at the figures. And that means on an ongoing basis, for years to come, well beyond 2021 and Rebuilding Ireland, the state itself is going to be responsible for plunging thousands of people and children into Elaine-type situations. It's not right, Minister. Now, this bill seeks to address that and says, no, the state is not going to allow that to happen. We are not going to put people into that sort of extreme situation. And, you know, when you add to that the absolutely shocking extortionate rents that are being charged in the private rental sector at the moment, Minister, and I held up a newspaper supplement, property supplement to the Taoiseach there a few weeks ago, just showing the rents. I mean, they're just unbelievable rents. 2,000, 2,200. Irish Reid tried to charge €2,800 for three-bedroom apartments. Who can afford that? Okay, anybody, you're literally going, everybody in those places is one paycheck away from an Elaine-type housing emergency. Because we're not controlling the private rental sector, and we're not building the social and affordable housing that is genuinely secure and won't lead into those Elaine-type extreme situations. So I would appeal to you, Minister, support this measure. Even on a temporary basis that we're faced with this emergency, in 5 or 10 years, if we get out of this emergency, you can look at it again. But as of now, there is simply no moral justification for people like Elaine and her children being put into that sort of extreme situation, and thousands of others like her. It's not right, it's not just, it's shameful, Minister, and this bill seeks to address it.
Thank you very much, Deputy.